Good afternoon or good morning for those of you on the West Coast. As we begin, just to take care of a few housekeeping items, everyone attending this presentation is in listen-only mode. The session is being recorded and will be posted on the workday.com website, as well as distributed to attendees afterwards via email. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer box. If we have time, we'll be able to get to your questions during the session. If not, we will follow up afterwards with a personalized response. My name is Evan Baum. I'm a senior solutions consultant with Workday, and I'm joined today by two fantastic colleagues, Brenda and Maggie, and we'll be your tour guides for today's presentation. Recognizing that we have both a mix of current and prospective Workday customers, we want to take a moment just for those who might be new to the Workday conversation to illustrate a little bit about who Workday is and what Workday does. Workday is one enterprise application allowing the institution to plan, execute against that plan, and analyze what's happening all in real time in one single software application. For example, as Brenda will show you later, in Workday Student, we might be able to define, for example, say a student's financial aid award eligibility for something like federal work study. In Workday Human Capital Management, we would be able to define the institutional jobs, as well as eligibility requirements for holding those jobs and payroll for processing those jobs. And in doing so, Workday Financial Management would allow an institution to allocate the costs associated with the different payroll components for things like work study. And why this is important is because this happens seamlessly all in one single application without the need to integrate the applications themselves or pass data back and forth between modules. Workday Student, as one single application within Workday, provides end-to-end lifecycle management for all things Workday, for all things student related, from recruiting and admitting prospective students to defining the institutional curriculum, programs of study and courses, course registration and enrollment, core student records, academic planning, degree audit, financial aid, and student financials. And what benefits institutions who've moved or are moving to Workday is that they're always on the same and most current version of Workday without the need to locally install any upgrades. Workday does 2 updates annually, and here you can see an illustration of the over 800 new features Workday Student has released over the last year. These updates are delivered to all of our customers all at the same time, meaning all of the new features are immediately available to everyone without any effort on the institutional end of the conversation. Some of the things we plan to highlight for you today in this conversation are around new features we've released to manage institutional holds, including the criteria-based mass application removal and reapplication of holds as needed, the ability to send group ad hoc communications to populations of students, our newly released talent portfolio to help students manage skills, competencies, and a number of other items that are unique to Workday Student, our online admissions application that we've recently released for institutions to configure their own admissions application, the ability for institutions to evaluate transfer credit for student applicants, our continuing student onboarding process for continuing students to have a personalized list of checklist items you might want them to complete prior to registration, reserving course section capacity in course sections, the ability to define stackable credentials within your programs of study, third-party access for delegated third-party users, as well as what I've mentioned already, the seamless ability for the institution to define work-study jobs, hire students for those jobs, and manage the payroll associated with those jobs. If we have time, we may even allot some time for getting into student collections and write-offs functionality, which is new in Workday 32. Now, this is just a highlight of some of the things that Workday has released over the last year in Workday Student, and even for the things that I've boxed on this slide, it's just going to scratch the surface with all of the things that Workday Student is and has done recently. Typically, when we interact with an institution, we might spend about 2 full days just with your campus and your student stakeholders reviewing everything that you might want to learn about in exploring Workday Student. So again, we'll only have time to really scratch the surface during today's presentation. We continue to see about 1 to 2 schools per month signing up to move to Workday Student, and here's a sampling of some of the institutions who've made the decision to do so. We aren't allowed to use everyone's logo, so this is just a selection of schools who have done so. Since the product became generally available in fall of 2016, again, we see about 1 to 2 schools per month making the decision to move to Workday and Workday Student specifically. In this past month, April of 2019, we did add 1 new school from the state of Florida and 1 school from the state of Michigan, but they aren't yet on this slide of customers. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Maggie to kick off a demonstration of Workday.
Thank you, Evan, for that introduction. And thank you to everyone who's joined the call today. We're happy to have you here. My name is Maggie Holtgreave-Searle. I'm a solution consultant on the Workday Student team. I'm based out of Chicago. If you've seen Workday before, welcome back. If this is your first time seeing Workday, allow me to be the first to welcome you. I've logged in as Brian King. He's our administrator today. You'll see that his homepage is personalized to his experience, including these applications or worklets that empower him in his role as a manager of people, as a manager of budgets and finances, and as someone who interacts directly with students. This is also his self-service experience as an employee, where he can take action and manage items like his benefits, his pay, and his own career progression. It shouldn't take a lot of training to get started using Workday. It should look and feel like other things you've already used on the internet. Brian here has access to his own profile, to his inbox to see tasks and actions that are being routed directly to him. And he can use the search bar up at the top to look for students, tasks, items, and actions within Workday throughout the system. Workday is a single solution for HCM, or human capital management, for finance, and for student. And today I'm really excited to show you some of the new updates that have been made to the student system. As you might have seen before, Workday has always been a system of engagement for users to interact with students. In this example, my prospective student, Darla Myers, I'm able to see a robust history of all of the communications that Darla has been sent, whether that's communications that were sent about an event that she did or didn't attend, or maybe it was an ad hoc communication that someone from my team sent, or finally, maybe it was something that came out of our DRIP campaigns or date-related campaigns or engagement plans. In any of these cases, we're able to see the specific information that was sent to our student via any of these methods. What we're really excited about in the recent release is the option to send ad hoc engagements to groups of students, not one by one. This means that we're able to communicate with a group of students without setting up a formal plan or campaign. In this way, if I want to send a quick communication to all of the fall 2019 prospective students who I met at high school visits and college fairs this year, I can select who those 21 students are and send them a quick message. I'm going to send this one by email and select the email that I want to send. I do have the option to use merge fields to address students, in this case, by their first name. And I'm just going to send this quick email. You can see that it's sending to those 21 students that we selected in that faceted search, and I sent it directly to each of them. Now when I go back into Darla's profile, and I take a look at her history, I can see that quick email that we just sent to Darla herself. This new tool allows us to send these quick emails, again, without setting up an entire engagement plan or campaign. It's meant to be used on the fly to interact with groups of students. My example was about prospective students, but this could also be useful as you think about your current students, maybe reminding a population that it's time to apply for financial aid for the upcoming year, or reminding them about an upcoming event on campus or their upcoming registration appointment. Another item I'm excited to show you about is actually also about prospective students. For prospective students who've not yet matriculated to the institution, they interact with Workday on a very specific external site. This branded external site or prospective student portal allows students to do things like view and register for upcoming events for prospective students, complete residency questionnaires or other questionnaires, and to take a look at their application for admission for the upcoming semesters. You'll notice that my student Lena here has 2 applications on file. If students need to fill out additional application forms for every program, for every start date, or if you'd like to have them have all of their applications on a single place, this entire page can be configured and branded for each program of study, for each student cohort, for each start date, for each college or major that they're interested in. The student has the option to complete a configurable application form. This form again can be branded appropriately by program of study, by student type, by student cohort. And the student can fill out a set of questions that are configurable, again, by you. The application is saved, and it does bring in information that we already know about this student. She doesn't have the opportunity to enter in additional information if we already know a little bit about her from her prospect record. When the student has completed an application, they also have the opportunity to submit additional documentation related to that. And so our student could come in and add her writing sample and upload it as part of her application on file. Now, in the interest of time for today, I wanted to show you that Lena has those applications on file and that Brian King is able to see what she's already been working on. We can see from her profile that she has multiple applicant records. The student hasn't decided when she might like to start. And we can also see her previous educational experience, both in high school and taking courses at a community college. In this case, we've received her transcript in an electronic way, and so we're able to parse the data about the courses she took at Bristol Community College, the grades she received, and we're actually also going to evaluate Lena for her prospective transfer credits so that we can communicate to our prospective students what they might have already earned at the time that they matriculate into our institution. We think this is really exciting to help prospective students make a decision not only on their admission to the college or university, but also to understand the financial and academic implications of starting if she's already received credit or able to receive credit for some previous experience in college. So what I'm going to do actually as part of Lena's experience is from her application, if we're doing this as part of application evaluation, I'll come in and initiate that preliminary transfer credit evaluation. We only have one transcript on file, but we could do this for as many previous transcripts that we've received. And there's those 3 classes that Lena had taken at Bristol Community College. Let's move forward, and I'll show you that because of our internal transfer rules that I've already mapped, Lena's going to receive credit in a one-to-one way for her intro to programming. Her advanced programming class is actually going to give her credit for 2 classes here at our institution, Programming and Algorithms 1 and 2, and we have a course which we don't have a transfer credit rule already built. She took advanced painting. I'm going to go ahead and assign her credit for those courses she's already taken. Again, we're showing the rules that already exist. I'm also going to add the advanced painting class that she took, and I'm going to manually give her credit for an art class here internally. Now we can do this as part of a business process if needed to route to faculty members on campus, so that if a dean or a member of the faculty needs to check before we assign this credit, we can have the appropriate people do a review of the credits she's earned, or if it's a standard item like a rule, like our programming and courses that she's already taken, we can make sure that she receives credit for them without a lot of hands-on experience. I know in my experience, working in college admissions and with transfer students, that this can be a headache, that it's a difficult process for everybody involved. And so our goal here at Workday is to bring in those courses all ready for Lena, so that now, as part of the prospective incoming student experience, we can actually send her an ad hoc engagement, just like the ones we did to a group of students earlier today, and send her an engagement item identifying the preliminary transfer credit rules she's already received based on her application. And here we're going to merge in what the units she's already earned and her transfer GPA. I can send this now, and in just a second you'll be able to see it in my Gmail inbox here as well. We think this is going to be really exciting as we receive additional functionality, and students are receiving communications about how many transfer credits they'll earn and have already earned as they start at the institution. Now, one more thing as we think about Lena is that we're able to always think about the courses and her previous academic experience, but we're also thinking about her extracurricular activities. In this case, Lena doesn't have any, but I did want to show you a current student, Desmond Gonzalez. He's been on campus for a little while. He's a current junior in the College of Business and Economics. And Desmond, in his progress so far, is creating a student portfolio, or a central location for Desmond both to self-identify or to document the learning outcomes, competencies, and achievements that he's earned either from coursework or from extracurricular work like internships and experiential learning. Again, this is a central location on a student profile to take a look at all of those extracurricular or co-curricular items on Desmond's transcript. For administrators, it's a central location to review all of this student data. But what we're really excited about in creating the student portfolio within Workday is that we're using the same language and framework that's already used across Workday HCM in the Skills Cloud and already used at the thousands of employers who are using Workday. This is going to help us to identify a skills match between students at your institutions and future jobs and positions at any of those employers. We think this is really exciting, and we're excited to show you more as we move forward with it. With that, I'm going to transfer over to Evan to move us forward in the webinar.
Thanks, Maggie. We're going to continue the conversation today as Brian King. And to start, we're going to go in to Brian's enrollment management dashboard. Now, Workday provides over 4,000 reports and hundreds of dashboards out of the box, but there's no upper limit to the number of dashboards your institution can create and the number of custom reports you can build. What's important to know here is that the data driving these reports is all accessible in real time, given one's role and security within the institution. So we'll come back to this plan versus actual course forecasting report in just a moment. But in one place, Brian can see student revenue by academic program, the tuition discount rate by program of study, students who are eligible perhaps for work study, but don't actually have a job yet on campus, open faculty headcount, and any other number of reports that you might want your administrators to be able to see within the institution. And to start, we're going to drill into this student holds report. So in one place, Brian can see all of the different kinds of holds for all students across the institution. And as I mentioned in the opening, in Workday 32, we released the ability for schools to define and automatically apply, unapply, and reapply criteria-based holds. So for example, Allison here has a health services hold where maybe we're still missing her immunization paperwork. Amanda has an advisor meeting that she still needs to have prior to registration. Amy needs to complete her returning student checklist. Maybe Andre, as an undeclared student, needs to declare his major before he's able to register. So your institution will define the kinds of holds and the reasons that those holds are applied, and where they need to be manually applied, and where Workday would automatically apply, unapply, or reapply them. But the student we're going to take a look at today is Devin Foster, and directly from this dashboard, Brian can drill in and take what Workday calls a related action and learn more about the information that he's seeing. And designing our hold framework, we wanted to address some of the challenges that institutions face with their legacy systems, where holds may just be denoted by a 2-character or 3-character code that isn't necessarily transparent for administrators or students. So in this case, Brian can see what the hold actually means and what the student needs to do in order to resolve it. And we'll see in a moment that this is exactly what the student themselves sees inside of Workday. But in addition to making the holds themselves more transparent, Workday has also delivered business processes for the application, overriding, and removal of holds, meaning that if an administrator within your institution has permission to, say, initiate the application, overriding, or removal of a hold on a student's record, does that process need to be routed to different stakeholders across the university prior to the process being completed? So in this case, Brian has permission to go ahead and override Devin's hold, meaning temporarily remove it from his record, and we'll say we'll give him permission to register until maybe next Monday. And what this would do is remove the hold in real time right now, and then automatically reapply it when the hold override expires, as you see us defining here. We're going to go ahead and submit that. And Workday is going to maintain a fully audited history of all of the transactions in Workday for all business processes and all user interactions. In this case, we can see that that process has now been completed. Brian has permission to both start and finish the process given his role within the institution. But Workday is going to maintain a history of the fact that he did that. If we just go back, what we'll see on this report now is that the hold has in fact been overridden by Brian, and we've updated the report in real time to indicate when that process took place. But in addition, what happened for Devin, that student for whom we overrode the hold, if we come in to look at the student's experience in Workday, is we actually generated a notification. So the kinds of engagements that we've been talking about to this point span both mass communications, as Maggie has talked about, but also real-time notifications related to processes. So in this case, Devin can get notified both inside of Workday and his institutional email, and even a push notification to his phone if you see fit, that the override has happened, as well as it being overridden from those dates that we've specified. So he now knows that even though he needs to complete everything in his returning student checklist, this override is going to only be available to allow him to register for the time frame that we've defined. So just like administrators will have real-time dashboards and reports inside of Workday, students will also have real-time dashboards and reports inside of Workday. So as Devin in one place, he can come into his academics dashboard and see announcements that the institution might want him to be mindful of given when we are in the academic calendar, or who he is within the institution in terms of different cohorts or populations he might be in. He could see his academic progress. And what I want to touch on here is this experience for continuing student onboarding that we've designed. Students in the design process told us that it can be really challenging to understand all of the things they might need to do simply to be eligible to register for courses at their institution. So we wanted to consolidate this experience so that in one place students can see what they need to do, any holes that they might have preventing registration. And just like Brian could drill in and see more information about what's going on, here Devin as a student can drill in and see, just as we showed you earlier, the description of the hold that's on his account, what he needs to do to resolve it, and even that this hold has in fact been overridden because of that business process that Brian initiated earlier. So we go back, just like Devin was able to drill in and learn more about the hold, he can drill in and see those 5 things the institution wants him to do prior to being able to register for the coming academic period. And this is an illustration of a configurable business process. So the items included in this checklist for your students would be specific to your institution, as well as who the student is. Maybe this list needs to look different based upon their program of study or for student athletes or international students. So the tasks that a student sees in Workday will be personalized to who they are. And we won't have time to go through and complete all of these tasks in Devin's inbox today. But one that I wanted to highlight here first is what we're asking Devin to do in terms of reviewing and updating any third-party access that he's granted to others to take action on his behalf. So this is a recently released feature in Workday Student where students can come in and designate third-party users. Here, Devin has already done that for his mom. And students can have as many third-party users as they might want, all of whom might have different kinds of access to take action on their behalf. So here, if he wants to update permissions for his mother, Elaine, he can see that to this point, he's given her permission to view financial aid, view his account activity, or view a statement, a financial statement. But if he wants to go ahead and give his mother the ability to also make a payment on his behalf, it's that easy for him to do so. Workday is going to track when a student has made these changes for all of their third-party users. And what's particularly powerful about how we've designed this third-party user experience, when a student makes changes to their third-party permissions, that's going to require them to revalidate their FERPA release authorization for their third-party users. And this is a configurable form where your institution would define the language that a student would see in authorizing their third-party users to both see and take action on their behalf. So here, Devin's going to go ahead and say, so my mom can pay my bills. Again, Workday will have a fully audited history of anytime the student takes these actions or makes changes for any and all of their third-party users. And while I won't have time to show it to you today, what third-party users like Devin's mom, Elaine, would see when they log into Workday looks exactly like what you've seen thus far. Really eliminates the need for a parent or third-party portal application for individuals that the student has authorized on their behalf to see and take actions that they've delegated. The experience is built into Workday, and third-party users who the students delegate will be able to see the same information and have the same user experience that you've seen thus far. Doing so might also kick off a notification to Devin's mother, Elaine, that she now has new permissions or permissions inside of Workday have been updated based upon the communication preferences that she as a third-party user has inside the system. Gonna sign out as Devin and come back in as Brian to talk about a few of the other new recently released items inside of Workday Student. We're gonna go into Brian's inbox, and the inbox in Workday is gonna be a place where users, given their role in security, are gonna be routed things that they might need to take action on in a given business process. So in one place, Brian has all of the actions that might be required for his attention, whether it's grade changes, course proposals, expense reports, time off requests, planning for his budgets. Again, there's a lot of things that we won't have time to cover in today's session, but know that the business process framework in Workday is going to route to a user all of the things they might need to be involved in given their role and their security. So here in this case, Brian is being asked to review a new program of study in international finance that the accounting department is proposing. And he can see all of the details about this new program of study, where it's allowed to be offered, and we'll come back up here in just a second. But Brian can also see the full comment history about what's happened in this process. So in this case, Brian actually sent it back to Mark, who's the chair of our accounting department, because he needed more details about what the accounting department was looking to do in proposing this new program of study. And if we scroll back up, part of what is recently released in Workday 32 is what you see here. In Workday 32, we allowed schools a really unique opportunity and a really elegant and simple way to define for any given program of study, which programs of study can be added to that program. So in this case here, we're saying for international finance students, they're allowed to add any programs of study within the same academic record to international finance, with the exception of the business administration major and those 4 minors that you see there. So this is going to dynamically show students and advisors the options that they would have or not have to add multiple programs of study within their record, given the criteria that a school would define here on the program of study itself. And not just what programs can be added, but which programs can be stacked to a given program of study. So in this case, what we're saying here is that international finance students, in addition to being able to add all of the items you see, with the exception of those 5 programs, they can also stack these 4 certificate programs with the international finance program. And what stackable in Workday means is that institutions within the same academic record can have a student concurrently pursuing multiple educational programs and multiple objectives therein, without the need to confer all of those in degree completion at the same time. We heard loud and clear from our institutions, particularly community colleges, but other types of schools as well, that they wanted to have students be capable of pursuing within the same record multiple programs of study that could be stacked together without having the rigid lack of flexibility that exists in other systems where these programs would ultimately have to be forced to be completed all at the same time. So stackable credentials in that regard are new in Workday 32, and we're really excited for institutions to start making use of it. The last thing I wanted to talk about in my section of today's presentation, if we go back to the enrollment management dashboard, is what Workday has recently released around reserving section capacity within course sections. So here for Biology 360, we can see that for the fall, we only have a capacity of 6 seats. We have 7 students planning to take the course. 6 have already enrolled, and we even have 1 student on the wait list. And Brian can drill in and, again, not just see how many, but who those students are who are on the wait list, who's actually enrolled, who's planning to take the course, does their planning meet some requirement in their program of study, and which requirement. So there's a lot of power behind this particular report and all of the things Workday has created in one place to define courses, sections, academic planning, requirement, and registration, all in one place. But to confirm, we can drill in and see that we do, in fact, only have 1 course section of Biology 360 with a capacity of 6 students. So Brian maybe wants to address the potential demand that we see here for students looking to take this course for next fall. We're just going to go ahead and take another related action and create a new course section. So Brian's going to create this section for fall 2019. And based upon the academic calendar that would have been previously set up, Workday is going to pull in things like start and end dates for the course. If an institution wants, Workday can automatically generate section numbers on course sections when the sections themselves are created. You also notice that this particular section is going to be created in a preliminary status, meaning it won't be visible to students or even administrators who would only have the ability to see official or what we call published course sections. So again, this is tied to the flexibility we built into our curriculum management process. In this case, If the institution wants to allow overrides for the nature of the course itself as sections are being built, Workday is going to default in all of the information on what we call the course definition, but an administrator might still have the flexibility to change something about the section of that course being offered for a given academic period. In this case, we could see that we have 6 seats that would be offered by default in this course section. But if Brian clicks this box to reserve some of those seats, some new configuration options are available for him. We're going to go ahead and just add 2 rows of how we want these seats to be reserved. So perhaps we want student athletes to have 2 of these 6 seats. And maybe we want students who are in, say, STEM programs to have another 2 of those 6 seats reserved for them. And maybe for student athletes, we want that reservation to automatically expire on May 17th. And for STEM students, maybe we want it to automatically expire on May 24th. The power of what Workday has built here is a really simple and elegant way to identify the population of who your students are using eligibility and conditional logic. So in this case, we could see student athletes or students who are on any one of those athletic teams. And students who are in STEM programs are in any one of those programs of study. So really simple to define who these populations are without having to program or code the system. And also, because schools told us there was a lot of manual intervention for having to remove these seat reservations in their legacy systems, we wanted to make it simple for schools to have Workday automatically expire these seat reservations and release the reservation back into the population for all students to be able to register as you see it defined here. So we're going to go ahead and create that preliminary course section. And in this case, I'm just going to take a one-off action to publish it, but we do have mass action processing for these sorts of things to publish course sections in bulk when your institution needs to. And after publishing that particular course section, a number of things happened. This report looking at course demand and section forecasting has been updated in real time. Now we can see that previously the capacity was at 100%, and now we're at 50% because we've added 6 new seats. And Brian can drill in and see that, yes, in fact, we now have 2 sections of Biology 360 for the coming fall. And if we go into Biology 360 Section 2, we'll also have confirmation of the fact that those 4 seats we had reserved for different student populations are there and will automatically expire on those dates that we've defined in setting up this course section itself. So with that, my time of the presentation is up, and I will pass it over to my colleague Brenda to take us home.
Thank you, Evan. I get the opportunity to show you today some of the functionality that we delivered in Workday 32, specific around work study pay. That can be a challenge in other traditional ERP solutions, since those moving parts live in different areas of that solution. You have the financial aid office that's awarding and monitoring the dollar amount that the students have available for earnings based on their overall financial aid package. And then you have the payroll area in which the actual earnings are being paid out, who may not have insight into what that overall limit might look like, and how it can respond to the fact that the student is either approaching that limit or in some cases exceeding that limit of their overall financial aid work study award. So we took the opportunity as a single solution and our power of one at Workday to be able to manage this much more efficiently, because it is all in one solution. It can have real-time responsiveness because again, it is in that single line of code. So I'm going to show this functionality from a couple of different perspectives so that you can see how it would look from other areas specific to financial aid that we're going to start with. We're also going to transition over to the payroll side and see how updates that are occurring in other areas of the solution can actually then be effective in the way that this is processed across the board. So we're going to start our view of work study by coming in and looking at this from one persona, and this is for Julie Winston here, and she is our Director of Financial Aid, and she is going to then be looking at it from that perspective. What are the earnings? Where are the students sitting at against those earnings and the overall award that they have? And that is a reporting function within Workday. So here, Julie would be able to see that one of the students listed at the top there, Kenny, is approaching his overall award limit. So it indicates information there that she can have right at her fingertips around how much he has in an award, how much is currently in a paid status. And so that then gives her what he has in a remaining status. You also have the ability within the reporting functions within Workday to have very specific visual indicators, as we're seeing here with Kenny, where that red flag is being lifted, if you will, in the fact that he only has $100 remaining in his overall award. These would be completely configured by you during your implementation process. So in our situation, we're lifting the flag if that is within $200 of their overall award. You would configure that to be whichever tolerance level that you would like for that to be. Reporting can also be extended and shared with other roles to be able to monitor this as well. So many institutions, you will want the supervisors of federal work study students to be able to have a report similar to this, where they can see where their employees that report to them are against their overall earnings as well, and be able to monitor it from that perspective as well. So we can see here immediately, or Julie can, that Kenny is approaching that overall limit. So let's change the perspective and look at this from a payroll perspective. So I have logged into Workday, and in this case, that persona that we're looking at this from is our HR director, Jill Jones. And so Jill is logged in. She's looking at Kenny and his worker profile, and she can come over here and actually get into his pay information by clicking on the pay column over on the left-hand side. And she can see that there are 3 different payrolls for this particular period of time. And by scrolling over a little bit to the right, she can see which ones have been completed, which are the first, the bottom 2, and that there's 1 in progress at this particular time. So for us to best illustrate this, let's take a look at these payrolls from that complete standpoint, and then we'll look at the one that's in progress. So Jill would be able to come in and take a look at the detailed information around Kenny's overall earnings. So she's going to filter this column of hours by descending, because we're interested in looking at the lines that are respective around his salaries. So we can see this first line of salaries for $150. It is then being allocated to the cost center of financial aid under student sponsored programs, or funding rather. And that, if we look over to the far right hand column and I expand out all of those work tags, we can see that it's tied to a financial aid award year, and it's being tagged as funded through the federal work study program. If Jill scrolls down to the next line around Kenny's salaries, she can see that $50 is being allocated to technology management, where Kenny is working. That's his position, lives in that department, and it's being charged to their operating fund. And again, both of those work tags for the award year, and if I were to scroll down, the program itself are tagged on those salary lines. So those are his previous payroll results. But if we were to come back under Jill's view of Kenny's information, and let's look at the payroll at the top, that was the one that was in progress, then Jill would be able to come down and explore what that looks like. And we saw from our report earlier that Kenny was approaching his overall limit. So again, going to sort this column in descending order, so we can see what that payroll results look like currently. So we see a line at the top for $100. It is going to be charged to technology management and to their operating fund. If we looked at the column to the far right again, we see no reference to the federal work-study program or the financial aid award year that that belongs to. But if we scroll down, we see that there are 2 more salary lines for Kenny for this payroll that's in progress. And they look very similar to what we saw in the previous completed payroll. And what this is doing between the $75 and the $25 is it is exhausting the remaining amount that we saw on the report that Kenny had left to earn under his federal work study. So we can see that, again, this is automatically tagging that it's under the federal work study program, and that it is under a very traditional 75-25% split. And the technology management department is picking up the $25, again, the 25%. But once Kenny has exhausted that $100, that first line that we saw on this in progress payroll is going to be charged fully to technology management. It will automatically change that to a direct bill to that particular department. Now, you may have a pooled account that all of your work study, your institution is paid out of. That would be fine as well. The concept is going to be the same. Once they have exhausted their federal work study program, it will automatically roll into that other program and other account that you have charged at your institution. So let's go back one more time to Julie's view of Workday, and she's going to come in here prior to that completion of the payroll so that we can actually see how it's responsive. So she's going to come in on Kenny's financial aid award. She has, as the director of financial aid, the ability to come in and make a change to his overall award. She's going to put this in an edit mode and come down onto that work study award that we've been seeing. And I'm just going to scroll down so that she can explore the fact that she can increase this award amount. She saw in the report that he had a remaining unmet need, so she would be able to increase his award. And then she's also getting an alert to make sure that she puts that in an accept status as she is making this update. So she has updated Kenny's award earnings to $650 for the spring of 2019 academic period. And she would be able to come back to that work study earnings report that we saw just a moment ago and see how the report is real time and reflective of the fact that now Kenny is no longer hitting that tolerance that we've set on this report for $200, but we've actually set it as a cautionary one if it's between $300 and $200. So again, you would configure what this looks like and how those alerts, either cautionary in this case with a yellow flag or red that we saw earlier, would be displayed for your staff. One more time, let's switch over to the payroll side of things. And in this case, we're going to have Jill recalculate the payroll. So now that update that was just done over in the financial aid area can then impact the payroll that we were looking at because it was still in progress. So the best way to be able to show you how each area was responsive in real time. And so Jill this time is going to come over and look at the actuals one more time. This time she's going to filter the column down. We were interested in just seeing those lines of salaries. So she would be able to filter this report by salaries and bring up those lines that she's interested in taking a look at. So let's scroll back up to the top and we can see how the impact of that increase in Kenny's overall financial aid work study award have now affected this overall payroll calculation. So now we are back to 2 lines of salaries. One is going to be that 75% being picked up by the federal work study program, and technology management is going to be paying the $50 because now all of it is back under the full federal work study program and not being picked up once that award is exhausted and not being picked up by the technology management department. So this would be a way in, again, how everything is going to be responsive to what's happening in the financial aid area, specifically in this example. So Jill would be able to come back here and she would be able to look at those payroll results one more time for Kenny. And when she does that, in this case, instead of just looking at that in progress payroll, she could actually then complete that payroll, and we can say one more time how we saw financial aid was reflected in payroll just a moment ago, but now we can take this in progress payroll that we saw at the top line, and Jill, because she has the security to do so, could actually then complete this payroll. Now, what that will mean then is Kenny's paid with that full work study being funding of all of those hours that he submitted. One more time, changing the view of this back to Julie. I'm going to refresh the report as Julie, and we can see again how that payroll being processed is fully reflective over in Julie's view of work study one more time. So again, his remaining amount is updated. He had $650. We just paid him a total of $600. So he's still back in the red because he's getting close to his overall award, even though Julie just increased his award enough to cover what we just currently processed overall. So that's a way in which you can see how both areas are working in concert together. It helps the administrative challenge around work study, so the institutions in regards to payroll, being able to run the payroll and knowing that's going to get charged to the appropriate departments when those awards have been exceeded. The last thing that I would like to cover that came out in our Workday 32 release was around student financials and the ability within student financials to add functionality around collections and write-offs. So I'm coming in under Amanda, and there's an area in which, as a person who would be collecting on past due balances, that those individuals would have an area in which they can make notes, they can keep track of attempts to collect on the past due debt. There's other functionality here up at the top in which you would indicate whether they're actively in a collection status at your institution, or perhaps have been turned over to a collection agency after those attempts have been exhausted. You would be able to define your collectors so that you would know which collection agency that this was turned over to. You could exclude them from notifications at that particular time, since the collection agency would be taking over. And if we look at specific information here around Amanda, we can see the different activities that have occurred to help bring her balance into a zero balance overall. So we've had a couple of interactions with her. There are other tools that can be leveraged across the system. So we've seen in previous sections of the presentation how a hold can be applied. And traditionally in this area where there would be a past due and a collections activity, that would probably be a transcript hold that you would be placing. But the collections person responsible for this would be able to do it right from here by taking that particular action. They could also leverage our full engagement area, so we could send out communications. They would be tracked as part of this student's record overall, and those communications could be templated and sent out using the engagement framework. And we'll take a look at the write-off functionality here in a few moments as well. But perhaps Amanda is calling in and she's indicating to that person that's responsible for trying to collect on this debt that Amanda would like to make arrangements to pay this. And so this is a nice work area in an area so that Amanda says, you know, I'd like to pay that off over the next year. So putting in 12 installments, she's going to pay it on the last day of the month. If you choose to assess a fee specific to being put on a collection agreement, you could actually have that set up here. In this case, we're going to uncheck that and not charge a fee. And that collections person would be able to refresh this, and it just gives them a nice reference point as they're working with Amanda to be able to say, if you make those 12 payments, this is what it would look like over those several months that are coming up. Here's the amount that you would pay. And perhaps Amanda says, you know, actually, I probably could afford to pay a little bit more and I'd like to get it paid off a little bit faster. And so we could look at, again, talking to Amanda and consulting with her and making her aware of what a 10-month payment agreement would look like of $310 per each month for her to get back into paying her $3,097 that she owes the institution. That's an example, so I'm going to actually disregard that agreement and not save that on her account. But perhaps we get further down the road and Amanda actually does not satisfy her overall amount that she owes the institution. There's a nice area in which you would be able to manage your write-offs. So Workday will present to you what are the balances that are owed for what academic period, so you don't have to dig into the account and understand which ones have not been paid up to this point. It will actually present those to you, and you can see those here. That individual that's taking this action can either select them individually or select all of them and do a full write-off onto the account, and they must then provide that overall reason that this is going to be then written off. So then this would flow all the way over into your accounting. If you have a bad debt account, then this would then be transferred over to that bad debt account overall. And so you would be able to simply click OK, and then all of those particular outstanding balances have all now been written off for Amanda. I'd like to conclude by talking a little bit about our community area in which, as a Workday customer, you would have access to and be able to explore and stay up to date on all the new features. So today we've talked about what came in Workday 32. And so how do you understand and be able to keep up with that? So I've come back to the home page for community, and I can look into the area specific to student, and you can see all of the functional areas that you might be interested in exploring. And by simply clicking into an area like financial aid, this would be able to then give you insight into what are the roadmaps for what's coming in Workday 33 coming up this coming fall. And then you can see at the top that we also have very short consumable recordings that our product managers go ahead and record about all of the new functionality. Allows you to be able to go out there very quickly, consume a very specific area of functionality. So I'm going to click into that work study area. And you can see not only what the new functionality that has been delivered, you can see what are the things that you have to do in order to take advantage of those. So there's some setup required so you could see the functionality that was demonstrated today. And then a recording by the product managers that have worked to develop that functionality. And because this area in work study pay involved other areas, not just student financial aid, but it also involved areas around HR and payroll that we saw. All of those product managers were involved in delivering this new functionality so that you would have it available to you. It also indicates how many brainstorms that were part of this new functionality. Brainstorms, if you're not familiar, are suggestions from our client community, and then other clients are able to log into community and indicate that they have a strong interest in those becoming part of the overall product functionality as well. So this recording is about 6 minutes long, again, keeping it very short and consumable so that you would be able to keep up to date on all of our new features and functions. So today I would like to thank everyone for attending. If you would like more information about Workday Student, we advise you to contact your respective account executive. And again, thank you for joining today's presentation.